The air above Varela Pass was thick with ash and fire as Captain Darius Holt moved through the crumbling remains of the outer wall, his pulse rifle gripped tightly in his hands and his breath short behind his cracked visor. The sky burned a deep orange, lit by plasma strikes and the glowing wreckage of Solari defense ships, while the ground trembled under distant bombardments. He was alone, now cut off from the 71st Human Vanguard, scattered or fallen during the failed counter-assault against the Carthic swarm. Rias didn't expect to make it out, but soldiers didn't dwell on odds. They moved forward, one step at a time, until either death or extraction came. As he stepped over shattered armor plating and twisted alien metal, a faint, static-filled signal crackled in his helmet weak. But insistent, it wasn't human. Curious and cautious, he followed it deeper into the ruins, past a collapsed tower, and into a broken hall of white stone, scorched by heat. There, half buried beneath debris and motionless, lay the figure of a Solari, tall, slender, with crystalline armor cracked across her chest, and a trail of glowing teal blood smeared across the ground. Darius paused, rifle raised, but the figure did not move. Then, a weak groan escaped her lips. He knelt beside her, pushing aside his training and instincts that told him not to trust aliens, especially Solari nobility. But this wasn't the time for politics. The woman's eyes fluttered open, revealing faint light behind them, and her gaze locked onto his. "Help me," she whispered in broken Terran. Darius blinked. Solari never spoke Terran unless they had to. He ran a quick bioscan. Her vitals were plummeting. Her nameplate, barely visible, identified her as Princess Solari, first daughter of the High Regent. Complicated things. Her blood was tainted with a Carthic's toxin one, designed to liquefy Solari cells. No human medkit could help her. His fingers hovered over the com, knowing there'd be no help in time. Then he remembered his nanite regulator, embedded in his bloodstream, a human military upgrade designed to repair internal damage, filter toxins, and even regenerate small injuries. It was clean, adaptable. He made a choice. He drew a sterilized tube from his pack and connected it to his wrist port, letting his own blood flow through the stabilizer and into a second injector. The princess's eyes widened in shock as she realized what he was doing, but she was too weak to protest. He pressed the injector to her shoulder and released the blood into her system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her body convulsed. Darius stepped back, watching in alarm as light pulsed beneath her skin and her veins glowed faintly gold instead of blue. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes snapped open fully this time. He saw something strange in them. Not fear, not confusion, but clarity. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Kept you alive," Darius said simply, holstering his rifle, before either could speak. More, a shrill, clicking sound echoed down the corridor. Darius turned sharply. He knew that sound. Carthic's drones. He grabbed Solari under the arms, lifting her to her feet. She was stronger than before, but still too weak to stand alone. "We need to move," he muttered. Together, they staggered out into the open ruins as the enemy closed in. Carthics were fast insectoid machines of bone and metal, drawn to signs of life. Darius fired in short, practiced bursts, cutting them down, but they just kept coming. Suddenly, Solari raised her hand, and a pulse of energy exploded from her palm, blasting a dozen drones backward in a wave of force. Both froze. She stared at her hand, shocked. "That's not possible," she murmured. "You've changed," Darius said quietly, not sure what else to say. The bond forming between them crackled like static in the air, something ancient and strange taking root. Behind them, the earth shook, and a deeper roar echoed through the night. Something bigger was coming, something hunting her, something that had never encountered a hybrid like this before. Darius Holt led Princess Solari through the dark canyons of the shattered Varela ruins. Their footsteps, quick and careful, the sounds of distant Karthik's clicks echoing behind them, like whispers in the wind, always too close for comfort, but never close enough to see yet. The princess, though still weak, moved faster than before, her balance steadier, her skin still glowing faintly with golden threads under the surface, and her eyes sharper, like they saw more than just the world around her. Darius didn't speak unless he had to. The strange link growing between them didn't need words anymore. He felt her fear when the Karthiks swarm neared, her pain when her wound throbbed, and her confusion, no, horror at what was happening inside her. It was changing, and they both knew it wasn't just physical. Her voice in his head was faint but real, like a whisper in his thoughts. Something is wrong. Something is growing. He didn't know what that meant, but he felt it. To every step forward made the connection between them stronger, as if the blood transfusion had awakened something hidden in both of them. After hours of dodging patrols and hiding under collapsed towers, they reached the edge of the lower canyon, where the ground split into a deep ravine. There, Darius activated his emergency beacon, hoping that anyone still alive would hear it, but hope was running thin. The silence that followed was heavy, until Salari suddenly grabbed his arm, her eyes wide. "Something is watching. U.S.," she said, and before Darius could react, a beam of sickly green light burst through the canyon wall, blasting rock and dust into the air. A creature stepped from the smoke, taller than any drone, shaped like a twisted reflection of both Salari and Karthik's. Its limbs shimmered with black chitin, and its face was smooth, silver, and hollow. It didn't speak. It just moved fast. Darius shoved Salari to the ground as he opened fire, but his rounds barely slowed the thing. It darted forward, claws flashing, and struck his armor, sending him flying against the rock wall. Salari screamed, her voice like metal tearing, but instead of running, she stood. She raised her hands, and this time a wave of golden energy pulsed outward, slamming the creature back, but only for a second. It recovered, faster than before, and now it looked directly at her, not at Darius. Not at the ruins, but at her, like it recognized something. "It knows me," she whispered. "It knows what I'm becoming." The monster lunged again, and Darius, bleeding and half-dazed, rolled to his knees and fired straight into the creature's eye slot. A burst of light, a shriek like breaking glass, and it stumbled, just long enough for Salari to unleash another pulse of energy. This one was stronger. The canyon wall shook, and the creature was thrown over the cliff, tumbling down into the ravine below. Darius crawled over to her, breathing hard. His visor cracked. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her body trembled. "I don't know what that was," she said. But it wasn't just Karthik's. It was something else. Kay didn't speak for a long moment. The stars above them began to shift as the dust cleared, and finally, a faint signal blinked on Darius's HUD. A rescue drone. Someone had heard the beacon. Within minutes, a stealth shuttle touched down near their location, and Darius waved it in with his emergency flares. The side hatch opened, revealing human and Salari scout troopers, a joint task force. They froze when they saw Salari alive, glowing, and walking on her own. She said nothing as they stared. Back on the shuttle, as they lifted off into the clouds, the pilot looked back at Darius. "They said no one made it out of Varela alive," he said. Darius just nodded and looked at Salari, who now sat silently across from him, her eyes closed, her breathing calm. But in his head, her voice spoke again, soft and unsure. "This bond between us, it shouldn't exist, but it does." And Darius, tired and battered, simply thought back, "Then we'll find out why." And far behind them, deep in the shadows of the ravine, unseen by anyone aboard the ship, The creature's broken body twitched and began to move. The shuttle soared above the ruins of Varela, its engines humming softly as it slipped through the cloud cover, leaving the shattered battlefield behind. But the silence inside was heavy with questions. Darius sat near the back, his armor scuffed and cracked, watching Silari closely. The Silari princess sat still, her hands resting on her knees, her golden glow pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. And though her eyes were open, she was somewhere, far away inside herself, perhaps, or deep in the strange link they now shared. No one aboard spoke to her, not the human pilot, not the Solari scout, not the medic who ran silent scans from the corner, frowning at the readings he couldn't explain. Darius could feel it too, the changes in her growing stronger by the minute. The strange warmth in his chest whenever he was near her, and the quiet presence of her thoughts brushing against his own. She hadn't spoken aloud since they left the canyon, but he knew she could hear him in her mind if he tried, for he could say anything. The shuttle shook hard, the lights flickering. What was that? The pilot shouted, gripping the controls. Darius jumped to his feet as the sensors blinked red. Incoming signal, the co-pilot called. But it's not a ship, it's I don't know what it is. It's a strange pulse. Hit the shuttle again, not from outside, but from within Solari. She gasped as her body convulsed once, and then the entire ship lit up in a strange golden hue. Every screen flickered. The flight systems scrambled. The ship dropped 100 meters in freefall before stabilizing. Darius rushed to her, grabbing her shoulders. Solari, what's happening? Her eyes were wide, glowing brighter than ever. I touched something, she said. There was a beacon. Something buried beneath the ruins. I didn't do it on purpose. It just answered me, before anyone could respond. A nearby console erupted in static, and a voice, unlike anything they'd heard, filled the cabin. It wasn't spoken in any known language, but all of them understood it somehow, like it spoke straight into their minds. The hybrid has awakened. The echo is active. All connected systems will respond. Okay. The message ended as suddenly as it began, and the ship stabilized. The pilot looked back, pale. What the hell does that mean? Darius didn't have an answer. He turned to Salari, who now looked afraid not of the message, but of herself. I didn't mean to activate anything, she whispered. It called to me. The blood, the bond. It's not just between us, Darius. It's part of something bigger. They landed at a hidden joint base built inside a mountain range, where Solari and human officers waited. Salari stepped off the shuttle. Everyone stared. Word had spread of her survival, of her glow, of the Karthik's creature that had tried to kill her and failed. She was taken to a secured chamber for examination, while Darius was pulled aside for questioning. He explained what had happened, his decision to give her blood, the escape through Varela, the creature, the energy pulses, the message aboard the shuttle, but the officers did not believe the danger was over. A Solari tech commander pulled Darius aside. We've intercepted Karthik's chatter, she said. They're reacting to something, hunting a signal they call the hybrid echo. We believe it's her. That night, the base fell under blackout protocol. Darius sat outside Solari's chamber, unable to sleep. The lights dimmed, and all around, security teams moved in silence. He closed his eyes for a moment, then felt her presence. She was standing beside him, though the doors had not opened. They're afraid of me, she said. Are you? He shook his head. No, I'm afraid of what's coming for you. Eyes met his, glowing softly. They're coming, she said, and they'll bring something worse than drones. I felt them watching, just like before. Before he could reply, alarms screamed through the base. Explosions rocked the walls. The lights went red. The Karthiks had arrived, but they didn't attack the surface. They came up from below. Tunnels collapsed. Floors split. A swarm poured in, not with brute force, but with precision. guided by something intelligent. Darius grabbed his rifle. "Stay behind me," he told her, but Sailari stepped forward instead. She lifted her hand, and her entire body flared with golden light. The Karthik's drones that charged them froze in place, sparks shooting from their joints, their limbs twitching. Then, one by one, they collapsed, lifeless. "I can stop them," she said, breathless. "But only if I reach the source of the signal. I have to go to the core." Darius stared at her. "That's deep in Solari space. That's forbidden." She looked at him with a calm, steady gaze. "Not anymore. Whatever's waking up, it's already inside me." Then, somewhere far below, they heard the deep, low roar of something massive. Something not stopped by her powers. Something not mechanical. And that, she whispered, was not a drone. The winds screamed around the jagged cliffs as the dropship approached the silent spire. An ancient Solari tower carved into the side of a mountain, long forgotten by both war and time. Its spires rising like broken fingers into a dark, clouded sky that boiled with stormlight and tension while inside the ship. Darius Holt checked his weapons with tight hands and sharp eyes, seated across from Princess Sailari, who sat in complete stillness, her golden glow dimmed now but steady, as if something inside her was holding back a storm just barely under control. Neither had spoken since leaving the mountain base. Not since the Karthik swarm had breached the lower vaults. Not since the deep roar had echoed from the tunnels. Not since they barely escaped through fire and falling stone. But they didn't need words now. The bond between them hummed stronger than ever. And each could sense the other's thoughts like shadows under glass. The silent spire had once been a beacon for Solari starseers. A temple of thought and energy, long abandoned after the Karthik's wars began. Yet it remained untouched, protected by ancient codes and defenses buried deep in its design. And Sailari claimed that the signal, the hybrid echo, had first pulsed from this place, long before she was ever born, long before human blood mixed with Solari royalty. And whatever waited within the spire now called to her by name. The ship landed in silence, its lights dimming as the storm thickened overhead. And no sooner had the ramp lowered than the air around them pressed with strange weight, as though the mountain itself was watching. They were met by a small Solari Guard Team 5 warriors, armored in sleek silver, with their weapons drawn and expressions grim, but they bowed to Solari without hesitation. For word of her transformation had already reached the highest councils, and though they didn't understand it, they obeyed. "We've cleared the outer levels," their captain said, voice sharp and careful. "But something's moving in the lower chambers, fast, silent. We lost 2 scouts already." Sailari nodded, her eyes distant. "It's not just machines anymore. They've changed." She led the way into the spire, with Darius close behind and the guards fanning out through the vast, echoing halls that stretched with endless pillars and walls lined with glowing runes that dimmed as they passed, as if the tower itself feared what followed them. They reached the inner sanctum, a wide, circular chamber with a spiral staircase that descended into shadow, and it was there that Darius first felt the shift in the air, like stepping into a dream that wasn't his. Solari froze, placing her hand against the center wall, and a wave of symbols lit up beneath her fingers, responding to her blood, to her very presence. And the floor shuddered once before the center opened, revealing a lift made of light and stone that began to lower them into the heart of the mountain. The deeper they went, the more Darius felt it pressure. It's like 1,000 eyes pressed against his skin, and voices, not real, but not imagined either, whispers just out of reach, that seemed to speak of endings and beginnings and the thin line between what was made and what was born. At the bottom, the lift stopped in a vast chamber lit by a soft golden glow coming from a single structure at the Centera crystal obelisk, taller than anything he'd ever seen, pulsing with the same light that now ran through Solari's veins. She stepped toward it, slow, unsure, like something was pulling her forward. In the moment her hand touched its surface, everything changed. The obelisk exploded with light, not destructive, but revealing, showing images in the air, stars, galaxies, fleets, rising and falling, Solari and human and Karthik's history, woven together like threads of a much older story. And then came a shape, massive, terrible, ancient, wrapped in shadow and fire, with no name but full of purpose. The first forge, Solari whispered, though no one had said a word aloud. The light faded, and the chamber shook, but not from the vision. The wall behind them burst open as a Karthik's horror slammed through, a creature twice the size of the drones, its body warped and groaned, fused with organic mass and gleaming bone, its eyes burning with something cruel and knowing. The guards opened fire, energy blasts slicing through the air, but the thing charged forward, grabbing one and slamming him against the wall in a spray of sparks. Darius pushed Solari back, firing with precise bursts, but even his best shots only slowed the thing. "Run," he shouted, but Solari didn't move, her hands lit with a golden light, her body trembling, and then she stepped forward, raising her arms. The creature roared and lunged and then froze midair. Not by force, not by pain, but by command. "You will not touch him," Solari said. Her voice layered with something more than words, and the creature shrieked, not in fear, but in rage. Before it exploded into dust, its very form unraveled by the force she unleashed. The silence that followed was terrifying. She fell to her knees, drained, but not broken. "They're not just fighting," she said, breathing hard. "They're trying to merge, cake what I am, and become something worse." Darius helped her stand. "Then we stopped them here." But more tremors rolled through the ground, and from the depths, a voice unlike the others spoke into the air. Cold and sure, hybrid echo confirmed, sequence complete, initiating reclamation. The obelisk cracked, light pouring out, and the entire chamber began to shift, machinery long buried awakening. From the shadows, hundreds of Karthik shapes emerged, not attacking, just watching, waiting. "It's a test," Solari said. The spire was never a beacon. It was a lock. A new form stepped forward, tall, silent, part Solari, part Karthik's, but neither fully, a living relic of the old wars. It raised a hand toward Solari and spoke for the first time in words. "We are the Echoborn. You are the key." Darius raised his weapon, but Solari stepped between them. "If I don't go with them, they'll take this place by force." He grabbed her wrist. "Then we fight." "Okay." She looked at him, the golden light in her eyes now flickering. "We buy time for others to learn what this really is. And when the time comes, you'll know where to find me." Before he could stop her, she touched the obelisk again, and in a burst of light, she and the Echoborn vanished, leaving Darius alone in the silence of the ruined chamber. The war above, still raging, but now a much deeper battle had begun, one not for land or power, but for the very future of what it meant to be alive. Beneath the cold black of space, the human warship, Vigilant Blade, drifted just outside the breach zone of the core world system. Its lights dim, weapons hot, crew silent as they stared at the massive glowing planet ahead, a planet no one had dared approach in over a century, wrapped in old Solari energy fields and forgotten war scars, now pulsing with strange signals none of the machines could fully translate. Though one word echoed through every frequency and every dream Darius Holt had for the last 5 nights. Solari. He stood on the command deck, his armor worn but upgraded with ancient tech scavenged from the silent spire, his hand resting on the hilt of a blade not made by human hands. his mind sharp but haunted by the memory of her vanishing light. The way she had disappeared into that ancient chamber with the echo born without warning, leaving only whispers and visions behind visions that had shown him this place, the core world, the birthplace of the hybrid echo, in the heart of a machine-organic force that had slept beneath the surface for eons, waiting to be awakened by blood not entirely its own. The ship's AI chimed in his ear, voice calm but alert. Known. Objects approaching. Trajectory suggests they are not intercepting. They are escorting. Darius stepped forward, peering through the glass to see long, dark shapes sliding from the edges of the system ships, not like human or Solari design, smooth and silent, black as space, but glowing with pulses of faint gold. They're echo-born, he said, more to himself than anyone else. She sent them. The captain looked at him, unsure. How can you be so certain? As I can feel her, Darius said. It's here, alive, waiting. With no resistance, the ship followed the echo-born vessels down through layers of defensive fields, each one humming with strange signals that ignored skewing systems but seemed to recognize Darius like a lost key returning to its lock. As they neared the surface, the crew watched in stunned silence as the planet revealed itself not a wasteland as old maps had shown, up to vast, living city buried under layers of stone and silence, glowing now like a heart restarted, towers taller than mountains, lights shifting in patterns too complex to read, and in the very center, a spire of impossible size reaching into the sky. And from that spire came a signal, a single pulse that hit every mind on the ship at once. Her voice, quiet but certain, saying only, "Come to me." Darius took a drop pod alone, against protocol, descending through storms and golden lightning, landing on a wide platform where echo-born warriors stood waiting, not attacking, but watching. They parted as he stepped forward, and no one tried to stop him. The city around him was ancient, a mix of machine and stone, lights moving through walls like rivers, streets paved in metal-veined stone. And overhead, the spire gleamed like a second sun. At its base, he found the entrance, guarded by two massive constructs that scanned him and stood aside without a word. Inside, the walls whispered his name, and the air smelled like stars and ash. He moved upward, each level showing pieces of history, wars not recorded, beings not remembered, creations both beautiful and terrifying, all circling around a single truth. The hybrid echo was not just a weapon or signal. It was a bridge, and Solari was now its heart. At the top, he entered a chamber of pure light, where time seemed to slow, and in the center stood Solari, or something more than her taller, glowing with both her old gold light and a new, deeper blue that shimmered like a star being born. Her eyes met his, and he saw no fear, only sadness. "You came," she said. Of course I came," Darius replied. "I told you I would." She walked closer, and he saw the changes in her skin, now marked with glowing lines like veins of energy. Her movements smooth but heavier, like she carried something immense within her. "I had to merge with the core," she said. "It was the only way to stop what's coming." He looked around. "This place is alive. It's waking," she said, "and not just this world. The Karthics, they're not the end, but they're the signal that something worse is reaching in from beyond the edge of known space. A hunger that made the Karthics what they are. It's coming, Darius." He stepped forward. "Then we fight it. Together." She shook her head. "I can't leave this place now. I am the lock, and the gate, and the map. If I leave, it opens. But if I stay, no," he snapped. "Don't say it like that. Tell has to be away." She reached out, her hand brushing his chest, and he felt the warmth in his blood pulse in reply, the bond between them stronger than before. "There is one chance," she said, "but it's dangerous." If you join the core with midges for a moment, we can cast the signal across the stars. Warn everyone, build a shield across every system. But you might not come back. Do it, he said, without hesitation. She hesitated. You could die, or save everyone, he said. That's enough for me. They stood in the center of the chamber, hands clasped, and light began to build, rising from the floor, the walls, the very atoms of the space, and as the core world roared to life, something beyond the stars screamed in reply, a vast presence, waking from ancient sleep, stretching claws of thought across galaxies, and then the chamber exploded with light. On the vigilant blade, systems shorted, stars flared, and every ship in orbit went silent as a single pulse burst from the core world. Not of destruction, but of warning, a signal so old and powerful it passed through time itself, lighting beacons, long dead, waking old defenses, and scattering the Carthag's forces in every system like leaves before a storm. When the light faded, the core world went still again, the spire dark, and Darius was gone. Only silence remained. But then, faintly, from deep within the planet, the golden light blinked once more. The stars over the core world burned with a strange color now, not red, not blue, but something in between, something ancient and watching, as if the universe itself had turned to look upon one place and decided its fate rested here, deep within the veins of a planet where blood and machine had become one, where history twisted into the future through a signal born of love, war, and sacrifice. And under that starlight, the war began, not the one of fleets and lasers, but of bloodlines and purpose, of those who descended from the old ways and those forged in the light of something new. And at the center of it all was the truth Salari had kept hidden even from herself. The hybrid echo had not only awakened her, it had created others. Darius Holt had vanished into the core, but not truly died, for when he joined with Salari, their bond did something unexpected. Something the core had never planned. It created echoes, scattered across stars, unborn children of mixed light and will, born not in wombs, but in pulses, dreams, and sudden bursts of thought on distant planets, where hybrid minds awoke with no memory of their origin, but full knowledge of a purpose they had yet to understand. And the Salari sat in the still heart of the core world, her eyes glowing with the shifting gold-blue hue of the merged. She began to hear them, one by one, calling to her through the network of light, like whispers in a storm, each voice stronger than the last, each one carrying the spark of Darius, the rage of survival, the will to resist what now came from beyond the edge of space, of force that had fed the Carthags, shaped them as weapons, discarded them when they failed, and now reached again, hungry for the bond it had once lost. This force, ancient and cruel, had no name, only a shape the no Cronand. It had learned from failure, sending not drones or ships this time, but avatars of itself, beings that walked like flesh, but carried emptiness inside, each one hunting the new hybrids to crush the bloodline before it grew too strong. And so began the bloodline war, a silent purge spreading system by system, with Salari watching it unfold and knowing she could not stop it alone. The first child to awaken was on Terra Novis, a mining moon near the edge of human territory, where a boy named Kale suddenly collapsed during a solar storm and rose minutes later, speaking in perfect Salari, his veins glowing faintly with the same gold-blue light Salari bore. And when the Null avatar came for him, a shape of shadow, wearing a false human face, Kale raised his hand and burned it to ash without knowing how, only knowing he had to survive. And from that moment, he ran, chased by whispers and fear. Others woke too, a girl in the ocean cities of Hella Prime who sang a song that made machines cry out. Soldier on the moon of Theros, who dreamt of Salari's voice and woke to find his wounds gone and his squad staring at him in terror. And, as each one fled, they moved toward one place, guided by a call. None could explain the core world. Solari sent emissaries, echo-born, loyal to her light, to gather the children and protect them, but the Null Crown responded with precision, unleashing its avatars in growing numbers, learning from every failure, corrupting Solari tech, infiltrating human networks, turning friends into enemies, and soon even the high councils of both races began to fracture, unsure of who was truly loyal and who had been hollowed out by the Null's touch. Meanwhile, deep inside the core world, a pulse of energy began to gather, slow and careful, unnoticed at first but growing, centered around the place where Darius had last stood. And Solari, despite her power, could not enter that place again, for it was sealed not by force but by choice, by Darius's final act of shielding her from the full weight of the core, locking himself within a cocoon of pure signal so that she could remain stable. But now, something inside that cocoon moved. As the war spread, the hybrids began to unite, led not by age or training, but by instinct, forming small bands that struck back against the Null's agents, using powers they barely understood, light that healed, shields made of thought, movement faster than bullets, and communication beyond words. And in time, they began calling themselves the Children of the Pulse. They were hunted, yes, but they were fighting back, and in their resistance lay a strange hope. The bloodline could not be broken by fear alone. Solari watched this from her spire, her body slowly changing as the core adapted to the new patterns. Her memories of Darius still sharp, but something else now rising in her mind, a thought not her own, but not fully foreign either, a warmth and clarity she hadn't felt since the day he vanished. And then, one night, the cocoon cracked. A light so bright it split the clouds burst from the core chamber, and from it stepped Darius. Not the same as before, not entirely flesh, but something stronger, a being shaped by love and war and the will of the core itself, with eyes that saw beyond matter and hands that could command fields of energy with a gesture. "You waited," he said to her, and her voice trembled as she answered. "You returned?" Their reunion was brief, for the war outside had reached its peak. Null forces now gathered in orbit. A fleet of holoships unlike anything either race had seen, and within each ship a mind that hungered for the end of the pulse, the end of the bond that dared challenge its emptiness. The core world prepared for battle, not with cannons, but with memory and signal, wakening the defense systems buried for ages, towers rising from the ground, shields shimmering into view. And at the front stood the Children of the Pulse, no longer scattered, but unified, ready. Solari and Darius led them, side by side, and as the Null fleet descended, sky turned gold blue with light and will, and the first true battle of the Bloodline War began, not to save one world, to prove that what they had created, something born of two species, two hearts, and one shared purpose, could not be unmade by fear or void or ancient hunger. And when Darius raised his hand to the sky, calling the pulse, and every hybrid lit up like stars in human form, even the Null faltered, for it had not expected unity to rise from pain, nor power from love. And as light and shadow clashed over the core world, the war entered a new age. The bloodline would not fade. It would rise.